I think somebody's going to look at this and think it's pretty attractive. And the reason is I think they're going to see...
You can only go to $5 million on an SBA loan. How could you structure this deal creatively without going above the $5 million SBA cap?
Yeah, to your point, Bill, figuring out the cost structure of a carve out like that is extremely difficult. And I've seen people do it, and I know what it looked like afterwards, and I've never seen anybody do it right.
My idea with this one is we go buy it.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Acquisitions Anonymous. This is the internet's #1 podcast on buying, selling, and operating small businesses. This week, we have a water well drilling business in Florida that also does a whole bunch of other home services, pest control, lawn maintenance, etc. So Michael and Heather and I go on for about 25 minutes on this one, digging into not just the business itself, but how you creatively finance a business that is a little bit too big to be financed with an SBA loan. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy this episode of Acquisitions Anonymous.
All right, taking a quick pause here. I have something to tell you. This is Michael. I hate bookkeeping. I hate bookkeeping. I hate doing HR. I hate doing all that kind of stuff. But for bookkeeping, I have found a solution. It is my friend Charlie's business called CloudBookkeeping.com. So that's CloudBookkeeping.com. They are your perfect partner if you want to get bookkeeping out of your hair and focus on making your your customers happier and more successful. So please give them a call. Call Charlie, cloudbookkeeping.com. Tell them we sent you. They're a great way if you're a business buyer, if you're a business owner, you're tired of hassling with getting your bookkeeping done. He's got a whole fleet of people that are well-trained and work for him. He's located here in San Antonio, so I can tell you because of that, he's awesome. And they're a great partner for you to potentially call to help with all your bookkeeping needs so you can do the important stuff in your business rather than worry about getting your books right. So give Charlie a call, cloudbookkeeping.com. And now back to the episode. So if Mills is going to be getting fancy camera and microphone too, that leaves one person as kind of the next frontier, Bill. Do you know what her name is?
I know what her name is.
I did my homework today, and before we even got here, I was on with Gustavo working on it. We found the problem with my camera. I have one, just wasn't working. So, and do I sound better? I have my microphone working today, I believe.
Yeah, you sound nice.
Baby steps, and there's a weird light behind me. See that?
I noticed the mood light right away. It's fantastic. Very good. Gustavo's getting you set up. You're going to look like a podcaster in no time.
He is. Absolutely.
That's great. Check Heather out on YouTube. You can see the evolution of Heather over the next couple of weeks on YouTube, on our YouTube channel.
Before and after.
Yep.
This is the middle.
You look great, Heather. Bill, can I shill that Heather and I are doing a free online lecture about how to finance a business purchase?
Yeah, everybody on Twitter thought the first one was really good that you guys did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had 1,300 for my first lecture. I had 1,300 people sign up. So hopefully we can beat that this time.
Hopefully I don't bomb those ratings. So please sign up, please.
I love that you guys have rebranded webinar as online lecture because it really needed it.
Well, so like it was webinar, and then everybody started to call them like open houses. Did you see this? Where they're like, "Oh, we're gonna have an open house." I was like, "I'm skipping that. I'm going straight to online lecture." So
I think it's great. It is a lecture. It's like an online class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I had 20 for the first one. I had 22 slides, and I only shilled products and stuff for one slide. So I figured that 5% was a good ratio. So
well, you can't just say it. If people I assume you're going to do it like another one, but you haven't mentioned how to get on it or where to learn about it. So you're not a very good shill, as you can tell. Only one slide of shilling and won't even tell you how to get on the list. Where can people actually attend if they want to come?
Let's see. I will have a pinned tweet on my Twitter account. So just go to my Twitter homepage. That's free.
Or better, get on the Acquisitions Anonymous email list or get on Girdley's email list at girdley.com. And I'm sure an email will land in your inbox about this.
Yes. Good thing you're here, Bill.
One of us has to be the marketing guy, okay? I know that's why you keep me around.
Somebody has to do some selling around here.
Yeah, I'm here to talk about, I had to name the podcast. I have to tell people to get on the email list. And then occasionally I chime in on an e-commerce deal, and that's why I'm here.
You're this guy,
So 10-second pitch. If you want to learn how to find money to buy a business, Heather and I are going to talk about all the ways to do it. And it's everything from friends and family to your savings to government grants to an SBA loan, right? And everything in between. And we'll just go through all the options and how people think about it. And it's totally for beginners, right? So we're not doing a very sophisticated stuff. Like if you don't know anything about it and you want to figure out how to get the money for buying a business, like we're going to talk about all the options. So that's it.
Wait,
cool.
Sounds good.
So let's segue in. I brought a deal, and
right.
And let me read it to you and see what you think. Unfortunately, since the time I found it and the time that we're recording this, it's now pending. So that means it's at least good enough that somebody else wants to buy it. So, but it comes from Gottesman and Company. They're a broker here from 1985. That's what they're established.
They're a broker from 1985. They're also from 2024, but they've been around a while.
Updated their clothing.
So this is an acquisition opportunity in our favorite state, Florida, which is, it's better than California, right, Heather?
No.
Okay. In business for 51 years, this company started out as a well drilling, irrigation, and water treatment business, specializing in well drilling, well pump replacement, aerators, softeners for residential and commercial properties, and is now involved with the lawn fertilization, home pest control, and weed control stuff. It has a state well drilling license, a state irrigation license, and pest control license required to operate the business. Owner would like to retire, but is willing to stay on in some capacity. Real estate worth $1 million is included with the business.
Interesting.
Did I have you at hello?
Sounds
Bill?
like a mess already, but let's go. Keep going.
Yeah, I have some theses about this, some ideas. Okay, but you can tell that Gottesman is kind of old school because they have you, when you call in, you refer to seller number S919-8 DBN. It's kind of like if the DMC or if the DMV started to do business brokering, how they would do stuff.
Take a ticket.
Yeah. Take a number and sit down, please. We'll allow you to look at the confidential information memorandum. All right. So financial summary. In 2020, they did $9.8 million in revenue and $2 million in EBITDA. In 2021, they did $11 million in revenue, $1.7 million in EBITDA. In 2022, they did $12 million in revenue and $2.4 million in EBITDA. So basically, revenue has gone 10, 11, 12. EBITDA has gone 2 to 2.4. They have compiled financials. They have a management team in place. They've been in business for 51 years, and they operate under 5 different SIC codes. And for those of you who don't know what a SIC code is, there's, I guess, Heather, what is the governmental department that creates SIC codes? It's like the FTC or something?
Yeah, I don't actually know which agency it is, but the old school way, at least for banking, we used to say SIC code. Now we say NAICS code, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the industry code. When you look at a business tax return, you look at the upper left-hand corner, it'll say industry code, and that's sort of the government's way of determining what's a landscaping business versus a contracting business. And this has got 5 different codes, which is interesting.
Yeah. Can I just complain about these codes for a second? Because
yes.
They have not updated this crap since 1972 or whatever. Yeah. Because, okay, so everybody knows, I sell dog supplements on the internet, right? Good luck to me finding a SIC code because there is no code for e-commerce. There is no code for pet supplements at all. There is not even sometimes a code for pet. Sometimes I got to do pet food. Sometimes works, but it's under manufacturing, but we don't manufacture. There's no code for brand of, oftentimes there's not even packaged consumer products. And so I'm stuck in manufacturing, even though I don't manufacture at all. My accountant, I'm in the manufacturing group. Because of the SIC code that I had to give them, the partner is the manufacturing partner. These things, yeah, if you got a landscaping company, great. There's a code for that. There is no code for most of the businesses started in the last decade. It's crazy.
Med spa is the same way. Med spa, you would just have put it under a hair salon. That's what it was.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I just
the Michael Scott line. There are only 4 types of industries: restaurants, railroads, sales.
What's the 4th one?
Supplements.
Dog supplements. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's start with kind of first principles on this deal. So what do they do? How do you guys?
What don't they do?
Well, yeah, a lot of stuff.
What's the fundamental business here?
I think the fundamental business is they have a well drilling truck and some guys, and sometimes they drill wells, and the rest of the time they try to keep their guys busy. Is sort of how I'm reading this, right? Because well drilling, well pump replacement, aerators, and softeners. This is for like, you got to drill a well on your property. I imagine in Florida, the water table is right there. So people will probably have well water. It's probably also hard to like do submerged plumbing and piping in Florida because the water table is so high. So I imagine wells are common in Florida, which is why this business is required. But I don't know how you then get into lawn fertilization, home pest control, and weed control from that. I mean, hey, we're here. We'll sprinkle some pesticides on your lawn. Might as well. My first question is, show me the split between, the well drilling and pump replacement stuff, which I've got to imagine is, I would say, a pretty good business. It's definitely going to be tied to construction, right? Like, you're going to build something, you're going to need to drill wells. If you're not building something, there is this pump replacement kind of maintenance. I would love if there was some ongoing maintenance for the wells. So like, of anything, I love the well maintenance part. So I'm curious how much that is. I'm way less interested in lawn fertilization, home pest control, and weed control.
Yeah.
What is this?
I agree with you on the well maintenance part. I've seen some really good businesses that maintain wells, and there's a certain lifespan where they've got to go in there and do a bit heavy maintenance. I think that can be a really good business, but the way this one reads, seems to be tied to just a new project, new construction. So you've got some project work over there, and then they're trying to keep people busy. One of the ways you can sort of tell there's a lot going on here in the different business lines is the margins. They're not consistent year to year. The business has been growing top line, but it looks like the margin's been shrinking a little bit. So maybe that's the mix of services that they're providing. Maybe they're doing more of the lower margin services lately, but it is hard to analyze a business like this when you've got, such disparate lines of business, and probably the mix changes a lot from year to year is my guess.
If the real estate is worth $1 million and they do all this different stuff, like, my gut goes to that this business is somewhere in like a smaller rural town in Florida, and you're not like in Fort Lauderdale or something like that. For those two kind of hints.
Is there an asking price on this thing?
Nope.
Okay, interesting.
Because this kind of like hodgepodge of we do everything type thing is more common in small towns, right? Because if you don't, you could end up with somebody who's, the well drilling guy, and then there isn't enough demand to have lawn fertilization and home pest control as standalone businesses, but there is enough demand to have one company that does everything, albeit probably not as good as the specialist would do it.
And also, you don't have this army of, private equity backed pest control companies coming after you, in small town USA. So it's probably a small part of what they do, and they do it, and it keeps their guys busy.
I'm also kind of a little, curious about all these licenses. That's a lot of licenses to qualify for and maintain. Who's holding those licenses? Does he have, 6 different employees that have those, or is there 1 or 2 folks that have tested and hold those licenses? It's always difficult in any business that's got licenses for, as far as who can buy it and how long can they rely on either the seller or existing employees until they can get their own license. But when you have that many licenses, it raises the degree of difficulty by quite a bit, at least on that front.
So the licenses are the state well drilling license, the state irrigation license, and the state pest control license. And if you're not familiar with licensing, very frequently what Heather's alluding to is that the licenses are held by individuals, not by the business, typically. So typically it is the owner of the business that is licensed, and everybody else in the business sort of operates underneath his license. But if he retires and leaves, you, the new buyer, need to achieve those licenses typically, and there are varying degrees of difficulty to doing that. I also thought it was really interesting, like the classic sentence here, owner would like to retire, but is also willing to stay on in some capacity. That's the opposite. That's like owner likes pizza, but also hates cheese. Like these are not this. You can't have both of these. Is he going to stay on? Is he going to retire? Like this guy does not want to stay on at all. He's like hedging here so it doesn't scare you away.
Yeah. My suspicion is this is small town business, that this guy or gal who runs it knows everybody in the town. It's a little 12,000 person town. Is seen at the morning coffee counter, on Main Street, and that's how she gets all their business. And you're going to have to decide to be that person, and move to this town and run this business.
At the same time, though, Michael, like for most of entrepreneurship through acquisition, like that's kind of table stakes, right? Like you're going to buy a business, like you do plan to move to the town and go to the local coffee shop. Like it's very hard to find a business to buy, a small business to buy, I should say, with $1 or $2 million of EBITDA that does not rely a little bit on being the owner in the market, right? And it's hard. It's just hard to not do that at this size.
Yeah, especially for local services businesses. I can tell you for software businesses, that's not the case. I don't have to move to Copenhagen.
Yes.
But that's also maybe why software businesses trade at higher multiples than this is probably going to trade. But look, that's not a bad life to live in small town Florida someplace. I mean, maybe worth talking about, Heather, is just this size of EBITDA is kind of, unless it's going to trade for a lot less than I think it would, it's probably above like the SBA threshold in terms of getting debt to make something like this work.
It probably is. 2.4 million in 22 is in what I call the no man's land. It's over 2 million. It's below 3. Being below 3 means it's going to be very hard to get any kind of non-SBA debt. And being above 2 means you're going to go well above the $5 million maximum, or you're probably going to need more than $5 million in debt. And SBA has a maximum of $5 million. So you are, too big for SBA, too small for everything else. And this is going to trade for a multiple of that 2.4 plus the $1 million real estate, I would think. I know they say it's included in the purchase price, but what's funny is they don't give you a purchase price. So I don't know what that line really helps us with, but that would mean this is just going to be a challenging business to finance. And if it is kind of a seller dependent, or you've got to be the person that's kind of running everything, that's more of an SBA type of debt situation. Conventional lenders don't like to lend into a situation where there's that much key man risk. They would rather lend into businesses that have, they're professionalized, they have a management team, there's less key man risk. So there's a lot of challenges to being a business of this size and trying to sell. Or on the other way to say it is for the buyer to find the right kind of financing.
All right. So challenge time though. Okay. So this business has $2 to $2.5 million of EBITDA as a local services business. There's $1 million of real estate. We know there's probably a truck or two. So there's a few hard assets. You can only go to $5 million on an SBA loan. How could you structure this deal creatively without going above the $5 million SBA cap?
Well, you need a lot of equity or seller note to make up the gap. So the way I kind of start is, I think, through the rule of thumb, which is you can only borrow on an SBA 10-year loan at today's rates about 3.75 times adjusted EBITDA. That's how much you'd qualify for. But of course, that's more than 5 million. So let's do that math. 2.4 times 3.75 is 9 million. Okay, so if you could get 9 million as a 10-year SBA loan, great, but you can't. You can only get 5. So now we have a $4 million gap just in terms of debt. So that could be more equity. You bring in more equity than the usual 10% that you might do with an SBA loan, or a combination of that and seller note. So you need a bigger seller note. And then you need to be careful with the terms of that seller note. If your normal cash flow works on a 10-year SBA loan, you can't go and turn a whole bunch of that debt of that extra $4 million gap into a 5-year loan or a 3-year loan and think it's going to work. Your seller needs to give you kind of longer term financing or interest only or something really with light debt service for that to work. You've got a little bit of real estate here. So this is something a lot of people don't know, but you can use the 504 program for the real estate for a little bit above and beyond the 5 million. You get a little extra runway for that. So this one, you could take this real estate and you could get 504, and there's enough extra runway that you could put that in that program. But you still have this $4 million gap, at least, depending on what your multiple is. That was me just doing 3.75 debt. You're probably paying 5 times EBITDA on this business.
You think?
So, yeah, all right. Let's just call it. Let's say 4.5. Even so, that's more. That's more equity you've got to bring in to cover that.
Oh, you really like this business. I was not going to pay that much for this business.
Well, now you put me. I don't know what you should pay for it, but that's kind of what you have to start with: is what's multiple I'm going to pay, how much debt can I raise, and it's tricky on this one, really tricky, and you would need more equity than the 10% and definitely some seller note.
All right, I bet Michael likes this less than 5 times EBITDA.
I was going with 5. It sounded good.
You are? Really?
Well, look, you lost me and moved to Florida. So let's just be straightforward with it. But okay, let's say 4.5 times EBITDA. That puts us what, at 9? Is that it? 9.5 million total.
But so why do you think this trades that high? I mean, this is a local mishmash services business.
I think it has actually, I think somebody's going to look at this and think it's pretty attractive. And the reason is I think they're going to see, oh, look, this actual mishmash is something that at first glance seems like a mess, but it's actually a pretty good counter-cyclical approach to the whole thing. Like home pest control, weed control, like that's not going anywhere. And then I can win on, well pump replacement and stuff like that. And, and then if we continue to have well drilling, which people keep moving to Florida, I have big tailwinds behind me. So I think people are going to look at this as a good mix, not a mishmash, kind of the way you're looking at it, Bill.
Okay. So you guys both like it better than me. Here's how I was going to try to do it. So like if I had to come in, right? So it's 2.4 in EBITDA. Let's take that as face value. I would say to seller, look, I can borrow $5 million from the SBA. I could put down 10%. Let's say I could put down $1 million. So I can give you $6 million at close, which is a little over 2x. And then you've basically got to find a way to deliver another 2x to this person, in the form of a revenue share, forgivable seller note, some sort of risk share post close. And I would say, okay, I give you $6 million at close, and we can structure a way for you to get another 1 to 2 million. I'll pay 3 to 4x for the business. You can earn another 1 to 2 million over the next 5 years if all goes well, and you assist me in the transition, and we hit our EBITDA targets. That's how I would try to stretch it.
I like that. I want to say something for the nerds out there about SBA rules and forgivable seller notes, because this is like a topic that comes up a lot. What's interesting is the banks have different opinions on that. So you might hear one bank say, that's not okay. You can't do a revenue share type seller note because it's an earnout and the SBA doesn't allow earnouts. And you have other banks that say you can do that as long as the note that you create around that and, the purchase price, the total purchase price comes in okay with the business valuation, which I agree with. I think there's nothing in the SOP. The SBA SOP does not have a single word about earnouts. So a lot of the, rules that you hear people throw out, it's just their bank's interpretation of other things that the SOP says. But I think you can do forgivable seller notes that are tied to net growth, but it has to be not so much that it's above, the current valuation that, the vendors that the banks use can support.
All right. You'd be threading it, the debt service coverage ratio, but I think there's probably a way to make it work.
All right. Let me give you my creative idea for this one, which you may or may not like. So in effect, we have the holdco kind of like penalty here, which is like we can't value it as a well drilling, well pump replacement business because it's got this pest control and lawn control stuff, and we can't value it as a lawn control business because it's got this well pump thing. And together, they're too big to really hit the sweet spot for financing. So my idea with this one is we go buy it, and then we go split it into two individual businesses and find specialists in each individual category there, rolling those up and sell the lawn pest thing off to a specialist there. PE would hopefully pay much more than 5 times. And the well drilling, like there's people building platforms around that too. Like we just go in and like sell it as parts rather than one big business.
The classic private equity playbook. I love it.
Let's go. I read Barbarians at the Gate once, which makes me an expert in private equity. Just so you know.
A private equity hamburger expert, both. I'm impressed.
Oh, for those of you who don't know, I recorded a video about why Whataburger's gone downhill, which is our local burger chain, and some news outlet referred to me as a hamburger expert. I don't even eat beef.
You're a speed eater.
So next time you read a news article that refers to a quote from an expert, it's probably Michael Girdley in a mask.
I've gone from Chili's expert to hamburger expert. So that's the story. So anyway, so I think that's an idea here. Or you buy the parts together and then you sell one of them off, right? And just say like, okay, I'm going to spin off the well drilling thing, or I'm going to spin off the lawn fertilization, and you just keep the other one. But then potentially you have 2 SBA buyers showing up and paying a higher multiple, or you have 2 platforms trying to buy you, right? Which private equity will definitely pay much more than 4 or 5 times EBITDA for one of these that's a going concern. So yeah, I think that's my creative idea.
The key to making that work would be that both halves is making an assumption here, would have to be big enough. Like if you had this kind of like split down the middle, so you had, 1.2 of EBITDA in both, I think those are probably both saleable. Now, at the same time, if it's just you got the same guys doing all the services, you'd have to figure out how to split your staff. You'd have to actually, during diligence before you bought it, understand if this thing was actually splittable, or if it's, the staff is 50% busy on both, or if it uses the same trucks, or, whatever it might be. You'd have to figure out if logistically it could be split. And you would also need them both have to be big enough, because if you've got like $2 million of EBITDA in one thing and $400K of EBITDA in the other thing, the smaller ones can be a lot harder to sell. So those are how I would diligence that.
Yeah. To your point, Bill, figuring out the cost structure of a carve out like that is extremely difficult. And I've seen people do it, and, I know what it looked like afterwards, and I've never seen anybody do it right. What they thought the cost structure would be when things were shared like that, and what it actually ended up being, which is usually pretty different. So that's really tricky to figure out.
Yeah, that's why that gap between the multiple you pay and the multiple you sell at needs to be pretty good. You need a good margin of safety there. So this is not my plan is
5. That's not going to get it done.
Yeah, my plan is not for the faint of heart, but it would be a lot more fun than some of the other options.
Thrill seeker. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
All right. So it looks like Heather and Michael like this a little bit better than me. You guys think this is going to sell? So you think this will sell for 4 to 5 times?
Yeah.
For the fours.
But it's going to need some creative structure or a lot of equity because of the SBA cap.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't rule out like a searcher backed by a family office. You're seeing more of that kind of stuff doing something like this. Mm-hmm. Totally willing to put up a $6 or $7 million equity check and a little bit of Main Street debt on it and a seller earnout. Like I wouldn't put that past happening.
Yep. All right. Well, so we like it. Not bad. Michael brought a deal we actually liked.
There you go. I knew I lived to serve. And Heather, do you want to give us an update on our plan to buy that business from last week?
Oh, yes. We looked into it. We were super excited, and they told us that it is already under contract. It's no longer on the market. So somebody else got there first and probably saw a little bit of what we saw, and hopefully we'll hear from them. Hopefully we'll hear from whoever bought it at some point to hear more about it. But we really loved that business. I think we were spot on about a few things once we figured out what it actually did.
If you bought the vacuum business, send us a message. We would love to hear from you.
Yeah.
Or if it really sucked, call us as well, because we're interested if it...
Either way.
Get it? Sucked? Huh? That one?
Thanks for that.
Oh, now I get it. Oh my gosh, I'm slow.
Because poor Heather has to record these episodes at like 4 a.m.
It's too early. Exactly. I need more coffee.
All right.
Let's wrap it up.
Good episode. We'll catch you guys next
If
week.
you guys like this episode, subscribe or tell a friend on any of your podcast platforms of choice. We are also on Twitter. All the hosts individually are on Twitter, or you can find us on Twitter under Acquisitions Anonymous. You can get on our email list. We would actually really like to stay in touch with you and to make sure you see our stuff. It really helps us out a lot. So find us on Twitter, subscribe to our email list. You can go to our website. We have all our back episodes on there if you're interested in a specific industry. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.